Luton Town go in search of a first ever Premier League double on Saturday afternoon when they make the long journey to St James's Park to take on Newcastle United for the second time in about 6 weeks. Alongside me to preview the game is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, ready to do the double over someone?
It's going to happen.
We'll preview the game after this intro.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. As I said before the intro, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe with me and we're looking ahead to Newcastle United versus Luton Town. James, this fixture has happened relatively recently in terms of the sort of Premier League era. We went there in the Cup a few seasons ago when we were in League Two. That's how long ago it was, all of 6 years ago. Lost 3-1. Would have been 3-2, but for no VAR. And who knows what would have happened then. And obviously we're an infinitely better side now. So reasons to be optimistic?
I mean, if you're not optimistic right now as a Luton fan, a Lutonian, then you may as well give up because we've really never had it so good. And after, beating Everton in a dramatic fashion and smashing Brighton to pieces in fully unexpected fashion, but fully deserved, then Luton could go anywhere and you've got to feel confident.
Indeed, yeah, 1 defeat in 8 in all competitions. Even if you take the 2 Bolton games away from it, it's 1 defeat in 6 against Premier League opposition. And I mean, we're playing lovely football at the minute. And let's not forget that just prior to that 1 defeat in 6, Newcastle United have already been to Kenilworth Road and lost. And yes, there was the whole Tom Lockyer do it for Tom thing hanging over that, but that's still relevant. But they lost 1-0. I mean, if they'd lost 3 or 4, they couldn't really have complained. I mean, still that crossbar shaking from that Ross Barkley incident. I checked it on my way out last night and it's still shaking. I should say we're recording this on Wednesday night just to give us enough time to get this out to you. So we're going to be guessing on team news, but we'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, if we can perform to that level again, no reason at all why we've got anything to fear.
Yeah, that's what I think, because it was 1-0 that result, and 3 points happened regardless how many you score. But it was the one of the best 1-0 thwackings I've seen in quite some time. They were fantastic that day, and if it wasn't for the Brighton game on Tuesday night, you'd say that was one of the best performances. I mean, you could say that for parts of the Man City one, and then for about 15 glorious minutes of the Liverpool one, although they played very well most of the game. But as a complete performance, the one against Newcastle was the one. And I think that they're a better team even than they were back then. From like over a month ago, we talk about the change in this team and the development and the evolution of this team, and it just seems to be warp factor 9 in the last couple of weeks. And with the injuries that Newcastle got, you got to fancy it going up there.
Yeah, before we come on to the game itself, this is a true English football ground, isn't it? St James's Park, right smack bang in the heart of the city. Everything that we want Power Court to be in a few years' time. Yeah, okay, the view from the away end, the players look like lemons underneath you, but I mean, you've not always been guaranteed an atmosphere in this division when we've gone away from home, but you're guaranteed an atmosphere here because the Geordies get right behind their side. We're going to get right behind our side. So I've got all the makings of a belting afternoon.
Yeah, I like Newcastle, believe it or not. You wouldn't know it from the previous podcast when I had told out of pelters from their lot because I pointed out the fact that you're run by a despotic nation state, and that is still true. But let's just talk about football, shall we? It's a great stadium in a great city. My nan's from up that way, so I've got family from that neck of the woods. So I've got a lot of time for Newcastle, the place. But you know, that doesn't count for anything really when we go up there, really. I think that Luton currently are a better footballing side, and they won't like to hear that because of where Luton currently are in the table. But that's just because they had to spend the first 3 months getting used to the Premier League. They've got it now, and I think that the home form is a massive strength, obviously, but I think that they can start going away now and doing the same thing.
Yes, fair enough. I mean, obviously 2 unbeaten on the road, isn't it? Albeit Sheffield United and Burnley, but still 2 unbeaten. 3 if you want to include the Everton Cup game in terms of Premier League. I know we've also beaten Bolton in that time as well. So the results are improving, and yeah, they're probably the 3 teams below us, but they're, you know, that's who's been in our way. You know, who's to say that we can't beat someone better? The narrative when they came to Kenilworth Road was about injuries in their side, wasn't it? Even though we were obviously coming to terms with the loss of our captain at the time, the narrative is still about injuries to their side, because while they had a fine win in midweek, at the time of recording this, we're still unsure of the sort of injury situation regarding Alexander Isak, who went off in the first half of that win at Aston Villa. Anthony Gordon also went off in that game. Callum Wilson missed the game through injury. A whole host of players actually for Newcastle missed the game through injury. So it looks like they've got an attack of the injuries again.
I'll take it. You know, they were a side, if they had all those players, most of them got them into the Champions League last season. You have to give them credit. That was a fantastic effort. But they've dropped off really significantly in this season. You know, thought they'd cracked it when they beat PSG in the Champions League, and then didn't even manage to make it into the Europa by finish at bottom. Don't get me wrong, I'd love Luton to be in the Champions League. We haven't been there yet. I say yet because who knows? That's, you got to have goals, haven't you? And fair play to Newcastle for getting there, but this season hasn't gone well for them at all. Where they are in the division is not where they probably thought they'd be after last season. It's probably not where the people pulling the strings at the club want them to be, but then they've got FFP to contend with, haven't they? And as we record this, there's still 1 more day left of the transfer window, and I've seen talk that they'd have to get rid of Almiron, and Joel Linton might have played his last game, albeit he's injured as well, for those sorts of reasons. And the cash that they thought they might have, or they know they have got, they probably can't spend for FFP reasons. And so that sort of levels the playing field somewhat. And the injuries, you know, take away some of those real star players. But, you know, since, well, not since Luton have played Newcastle, but in the last couple of months, Luton and Luton's players have gone up against better players than Newcastle have, and they've equipped themselves really well. So you have to go up there with confidence.
You do, yeah. If Isak misses out in particular, with Wilson also out, you do wonder who's going to be centre forward for them. They're obviously not going to play a natural centre forward, so that will help us. And I don't think we were too worried about the wide players. We contained the 2 wide players pretty well down here. I mean, apart from that Callum Wilson chance that Kaminsky saved in the first half, which probably had no real right to save, but he did save it, they could still be playing now and they wouldn't have scored. So, yeah, if Isak's out injured, because let's not forget Isak came on in the first half at our place, didn't he, when they realised they'd made a boo-boo with their tactics. If he's not about, you know, might make for a much easier afternoon. And given that I'm making the trip, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I think the one for me, even though Isak is a great goal scorer, he's a very good goal scorer. I wouldn't call him great right now. They've had quite a lot of very, very good goal scorers in their time, Newcastle. but he knows where the net is and he can score all types of goals. But I think the one that Luton did manage to keep quiet in the first game and may not even play in this one after that game at Aston Villa was Anthony Gordon, because his improvement and progression as a footballer since he left Everton is quite remarkable, and I think he's one of the most exciting talents they've got, and if he's not going to be on the pitch, then that's going to be a benefit.
Progression since left Everton, one of the most exciting talents they've got. Where have I heard this all before? Oh, I know. Yeah, our very own Ross Barkley, absolutely. Let's bring it back to Luton then. We don't know how Newcastle are going to line up, but reading between the lines, they're not going to be any better in terms of personnel than what they were down here, so that's good. We don't technically know how Luton are going to line up either, but all the vibes were that Teden Mengi wasn't too bad, so we're hoping he's available if he can get in that side anywhere. And I don't know, I'm not being facetious, I don't know if he gets in. You would say he would, but I don't know who he gets in for. Reece Burke maybe, but Reece Burke's just been brilliant. Whether he can do 3 games in a week, I guess, would be the question mark, so that might be where Mengi comes in. Kabore's out of the Africa Cup of Nations now. He'll be back with us for the Newcastle game, I would imagine. Again, whether he's risked having played on Tuesday night, then flown from Ivory Coast to Luton, you would imagine if he plays, he might be on the bench, perhaps. And we're still, at the time of recording, waiting for our Japanese international Hashioka to have his visa and international clearance and everything. So I would imagine that one's a no-no, just based on the speed that football works. But if he's fit, does Mengi come in for Burke?
This is a debate of our times, isn't it, really? Because Mengi against Everton in the FA Cup at the weekend was incredible. And he has been incredible all weekend. I still don't know how Manchester United managed to let him go, but I'm all very grateful for it.
It's a mystery that even Hercule Poirot can't solve that one.
That's one for the kids, that front, isn't it?
I was going to say Agatha Christie, but that would be even more fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go for Poirot then. Why were we talking about Poirot?
Because of Mengi and Manchester United.
That's the one. Mengi and Manchester. You right through me there.
It's like when Rob threw Jeff in the press conference last week, wasn't it? Put you right out of sync.
Exactly. It's a real tough one because he should come back in because he's bloody good. But Osho, Burke and Bell against Brighton, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say Watford then because I'm just thinking of João Pedro crying. So against Brighton were incredible. They were. Osho was exceptional in everything he did, virtually faultless. And Burke was so influential in an attacking sense, great in defence as well, but in an attacking sense, like nicking the ball off them and setting things off, and even had a shot at one point, which not a lot of the other defenders are quite used to doing. And we have seen him ping one in from a long way as well. So, yeah, I think, in the way that when Morris got injured and Elijah came in and he kept his place even when Morris got fit again, I think it's almost after a performance like that against Brighton, you just have to stick the same one out again.
Which would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because I think most people prior to the Brighton game would have assumed that Andros Townsend would have started that game. Mm-hmm. But again, Jordan Clark was absolutely brilliant. As we alluded to in the Brighton review, if you've not watched that yet, we did. But of course, Townsend used to play for Newcastle. He'll be especially motivated to play in this game. But ultimately, it just highlights the options that Rob's got at his disposal now.
It does, and we're now truly in horses for courses territory, really, rather than trying to just fill in places here and there. I mean, the injury list now is not that bad, actually. Certainly not compared to Newcastle, but compared to where Luton were a while ago. A couple of months in, and it was just an epidemic of hamstring injuries, wasn't there? And now we're only looking at, obviously, Lockyer has going to be out for the long term, and who knows after that. But Marvelous probably isn't going to see action until, the very end of the campaign, we would imagine. And then it's really just Mengi because everybody else is available. So it's an unusual situation to be in, but a good one, which means he can purely pick the team on a tactical basis. But the three that they have in the central defensive positions, as we've seen in these recent games, certainly in this calendar year games, they can play this high line with absolute confidence that if anyone does get in behind them, that they can recover. That's a really, really useful talent to have in a back line, because it also means going forward, they're in the mix as well.
It does, yeah. Speaking of going forward, obviously, we're not sure where Jacob Brown is with his fitness at the moment, but the 3 or 4 that are being used in those positions at the moment have probably gone slightly clear of him whilst he's been out injured anyway. So again, I would imagine he would only be on the bench if he's fit. But hey, what another fantastic option again for Rob to have at his disposal. He is going to have to use 5 subs in this game, isn't he? It's a big pitch for them to cover 3 days after a huge effort against Brighton. But that's what the 5 subs are there for, isn't it? So, if you've got them, you might as well use them. And that's one area of this game where we might be able to take advantage. We know we're damn good in the last 20 minutes of a game of football. Newcastle aren't going to be bringing £50 million players off the bench. There won't be no Isak coming off the bench like there was down at our place. They're going to be bringing youth team products. And they've got, if you look at Miley, for example, they've got some products that are good. But they're going to be bringing sort of lesser lights off, not players that are as good as the ones that are on the pitch, whereas we're bringing players on who are perfectly adequate and as good as the ones that are being replaced. And that could be where we really get at them in this game if we hang in this game early on. And it is a tough place to go. I mean, they've given some shellackings out this season. I mean, PSG, one of the best sides in Europe, couldn't even get near them. We should remember that. Aston Villa got absolutely battered on the opening day here. If we can hang in this game beyond the hour mark, be level with them, goal behind or whatever, the last half an hour we can really come into our own.
I think so, but I think that's almost the bare minimum now for Luton, because they've got this unbelievable record of goals scored after 75 minutes. Was it 15 now? Before they went on a rampage against Brighton, it was 15 of 29 goals, which was absolutely incredible stat.
Absolutely ruined that percentage.
They did. They really did. I mean, I'm not complaining. It was a great night against Brighton, but having that in your locker means you stay in any game and you've got a chance. And then you factor in Luton's abilities with set pieces, because all they need is one of those. And as we saw against Everton in the Cup, that's where that come from. Caused panic with a Luke Berry corner. Corley Woodrow pops up, so that's almost like the bare minimum. And I think that's what Edwards was talking about actually after the Brighton game, in that one of the ways that they affected that change from the opening game of the season against Brighton to the one on Tuesday night was that immediately after, the day after in the brace, he was highlighting, showing the players that they just weren't running enough. And you can't question their fitness and their relentlessness now, because they're just full throttle. So if they are in it, if it is close, then you fancy that the latter stages could bring something. But what the Brighton game now showed is that you can go full throttle right from the off and try and kill it that way as well. And there's a lot for Newcastle to be fearful of, really.
Yeah, there is. The game that they've played recently that would be of most interest to me would be the Boxing Day clash at home to Nottingham Forest, where again they had all of these injuries. And the longer that game went on, Forest just grew and grew and got more and more into it. And I mean, they ran out 3-1 winners, but they could have had another 3-4. I mean, when the equaliser and the second goal came from Forest, the equaliser came right before half-time. The second goal came shortly after half-time. You could see it coming a mile off. And I'm sure Eddie Howe could. He's not stupid. Just didn't have the tools to do anything about it because of the lack of weapons at his disposal on the bench. I think we could be very similar. We've got the pace and the power that's similar to what Forest have up front. You know, Chris Wood did the damage that day. Well, Elijah's no worse in terms of attributes than Chris Wood. And then, you know, their two wingers, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. We're going to have sort of Clark and Morris or Chio or Townsend or whoever it may be. Very similar setup in terms of attributes to the forward players. So I can see us doing some damage there. We're going to have to ride a 20, 25, 30-minute storm because, as we said, it's a great place. The atmosphere is going to be bounced, especially after they've just beat Aston Villa away. Why wouldn't it be bouncing? But if we can weather that storm, get through it, similar to how we did at Old Trafford, where at Old Trafford we didn't have those players up the pitch to create and cause untold damage, here I think we will have the belief, the players up the pitch and the personnel to do the damage. And it sounds stupid after we've just won 4-0 against Brighton in the manner that we won 4-0, but this could be a real statement game. So we're going away to a team, as I've just said, who've just battered PSG. If we can go there and take them on and look better in doing it, my word, what's that going to say to everyone down the bottom of the table?
Well, I mean, people down the bottom of the table are already a bit fearful, I think,
they should be, yeah,
with what's happening. But yeah, you're right. We knew that the home form, Kenilworth Road, making that a fortress and making that some place that's horrible to go to that people don't like was going to be massively key to any sort of survival bid, and that seems to be taking care of itself now. As we thought, the next challenge is obviously to go away and do the business at these bigger sides, because it's one thing shocking the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal and Man City by welcoming them to the Kenny. It's different when you go up to their places, and like you say, St James's is a massive pitch. And the fans, relatively speaking, you mentioned Manchester United. I think they're a world away from the Manchester United fans who are moaning gobshites, whereas I think the Newcastle fans are in a lot better spirits these days. So the atmosphere could be up. But like all football grounds, if you quieten that down for a little, in any way, goals or just even if it was the way that West Ham did it to Luton on that first home game of the season, then that sort of changes the dynamic of the crowd aspect. It's just a sort of different way of looking at it, of how you feed off it for Luton in Kenilworth Road and how you can take away from it when you go away. And so they've got to be able to do that if they really want to. If they don't want to make it like really nail biting towards the end of the season, you've got to go to these grounds and pick up some results. A draw is still a fantastic result. For instance, if you go away to somewhere like Newcastle, a win is dreamland. You batter them 4-0 like you did against Brighton, then oh my God, we're I don't know how we're going to be able to like keep our feet on the ground after that, but cross that bridge when you come to it.
I mean, if we do that, then we can stop talking about relegation once and for all, can't we? That's I mean, you're right. The home form keeps us up. The away form makes it easier. That's how I see it from here on now. If you can pick up a couple of wins away from home, it will just put that little bit of buffer, because there is still that uncertainty with Everton and this appeal and everything else, which we'll come on to next month when their verdict is out. Where do we hurt this side? At home, it was over Dan Burn, wasn't it? Or around Dan Burn. Everything we did went at Dan Burn, and he couldn't cope. And ultimately, in the end, you know, we got our joy. That's got to be the area again, hasn't it? For all Trippier's had his woes on the other side, he does seem to be coming into a little bit better form from what I've seen. I mean, the recent game, I didn't see the game against Villa because obviously we were playing at the same time, but I did see them in the Cup against Sunderland, and he looked much more secure in that game. But Dan Burn, we clearly made a point of targeting him, didn't we? So I would imagine we're going to go down that side again.
Particularly after the way that Elijah absolutely bullied Lewis Dunk in Brighton. Similar stature, aren't they? I think so. The red hot form that Elijah's in at the moment, I think you've got to play to that strength. you have to, because any sort of sniff in the box and you'd fancy him, and the ball goes in the box a lot with Luton, doesn't it? So they're playing to his strengths right now for sure. And yeah, if he's going to be if Dan Burn's going to be playing and he didn't have the best time at Kenilworth Road, then yeah, target again.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And the other thing, of course, the game's probably going to be settled by Barkley and Lokonga against Guimaraes and the two that are alongside him. I mean, they couldn't touch Barkley at our place. The only thing that saved them was the crossbar. If that's 3 inches higher at their place and Barkley does the same thing again, then he's scoring that worldie that you spoke about in the last podcast. No midfielders got close to these two yet. They've taken on Manchester City. They've taken on Chelsea. I know Chelsea beat us, but that was all down the wider areas. They've taken on Brighton. No one's getting close to these two. And there's, if this midfield doesn't get close to them, then they are in for a long afternoon.
I think so, particularly in the new formation that Luton are playing, because they have Chio and Morris, if they're going to be the ones that start in that slightly withdrawn role from Adebayo, and there's no reason not to, because they both are outstanding against Brighton, so they keep their place for me. The gap between Barkley, Lokonga and those two is shorter, so they can play their way out through the middle if needs be. But we know if that gets too congested, then Barkley can just go out with Lokonga as well. They can both do it, ping a 60-yard ball to somebody either out on the wing or pick the likes of Chio out, as in the second goal against Brighton. So they're developing so many different ways that they can get out from any sort of press or any sort of melees in the middle, and it's really, really exciting to see.
Yeah, that it is. That's for sure. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the game plays out. This is since our formation change, this is the first away game that it comes under serious test, isn't it? No disrespect to Everton, Sheffield United, Burnley, but they are the teams around us. I mean, Everton don't really play modern football anyway. I mean, again, that's no disrespect. They don't, do they? They just rely on set pieces and physicality. Sheffield United.
Don't Luton.
Well, so they say.
Just a set piece team, apparently.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Ask Brighton.
Yeah, exactly.
Sheffield United the same. Burnley kind of different, but when we went there, you kind of got the feeling that they've lost their way completely and don't know stick or twist or how to do it. So, but this lot will, particularly on their own patch, they know exactly what they're doing, don't they? So this is the acid test of this formation and this high back three and everything else. So we'll get a real indication of where we are for the away games to come for the rest of the season during the course of this 90 minutes. So that's something that's exciting, really. And yeah, like you said, a point, absolutely happy days. Take that right now. 4 points from these two games. You run for the hills, don't you? Particularly in line of, I'm not saying we've got automatic 3 points straight after it, but 3 points that if we're going to expect 3 points this season, and let's not get all big Charlies and everything, but if we are going to expect 3 points between now and the end of the season, it is that game after this one against Sheffield United. A point here would be fine. If you then go on and get those 3 points, that's 7 points from 9. You get 7 points from 9 in the Premier League, and you do a hell of a lot of damage to the league table, as we're seeing.
Well, absolutely. Just before Christmas, I was speaking to Ross Barkley, and he was adamant that they could get to 40 points. I wasn't so sure back then, but now why not? Sky's the limit, really. But you've got to go to away grounds and pick up something, and a point will be great. A 4 point week would be great. A 6 point week would be unbelievable. But it's doable because of that. Losses seem few and far between at the moment. It's just that one against Chelsea in the last 8, all competitions, admittedly, and to play Bolton twice in the cup. But that game was not like they got battered. They just got clinically outdone. Well, that seems to be changing now, because now Luton are being clinical and they're learning that skill. So, and it was so close, that Chelsea game. They should have got a point. at least. And when you talk about it in those terms, the mindset and the psychological effect of continuing to grind out results, whether it's win or draw, is massively important, because on the other side of the coin is your Burnleys and your Sheffield Uniteds who just get beaten every week. And long may that continue, by the way. So it only needs one team for us to finish above. But the demoralising effect of those things, particularly the fact that Luton were part of that, late comebacks against Sheffield United and a late one against Burnley to draw, it all plays its part in the mind games that is Premier League football.
You mentioned that you didn't believe Ross Barkley when he said we could get 40 points. I believe in Ross Barkley so much. If he told me I could fly to the moon, I'm off to get my astronaut's gear. It's, what a man. Yeah. When I heard him say that, I have to say, I was like, 40 points.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see it. Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. You are spot on. I mean, this game is part of a big weekend again. Everton play first this weekend. They're at home to Tottenham, should I say, who've just done us a favour by beating Brentford and kept them in the mix. So were they to lose, we would have the chance to go 4 points clear with a win in this game. Nottingham Forest don't play until Sunday. So were we to win or draw this game, we would go above Nottingham Forest. I think we cleared them in goal difference on Tuesday night. I'm pretty sure we did. So we'd go above Nottingham Forest just by drawing this game. And Brentford, poor old Brentford, they've got Manchester City on Monday night, who are starting to look rampant already. And there isn't a great deal of difference between us and them, goal difference-wise. So were we to get the 3 points here, we could find ourselves come Tuesday morning in a right sweet position in this league table. So there's an awful lot to play for here. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic and a lot of reason to look forward to what could be another big weekend after a night where we've already just made the league table look so much better.
It does feel like that. It feels like everything's sort of shaping up and everything's coming up Luton at the moment. And while that's happening, you just got to ride the crest of that particular wave, for the want of a better cliche. But you know that they're going to give 100% effort. I guess the factor of it being such a relentless performance against Brighton on a Tuesday and then having to go to Newcastle and do it on a bigger pitch is another one of those acid tests you sort of mentioned. But they'll give it 100%, absolutely, and that's all you can ask for. But they aren't just a workman-like side anymore. They're a side that's going to score goals, and I'm confident they will.
I'll find out how confident in a moment when we give our score predictions. I mean, if you think back to the Cup game a few years ago, we were done and dusted before we got in the game. They were 3-0 up after half an hour. So 3 soft goals, everything that you don't want in an away performance, really. Yeah, the last hour, the fight back, the fact that we should have been 3-2 and everything else was brilliant, but we can't get ourselves in that situation where we're 3-0 down, and I'm confident these boys are more resilient than that and they won't do that. And that, again, therefore highlights the chance that we have available to us. Score predictions, then. We'll conclude the podcast as we always do with score predictions, and I will be more than happy to take a 1-1 draw here, and that's exactly what I'll go with. I can't believe we're going to keep Newcastle out for 180 minutes. I'd love to believe it.
180 minutes?
Well, we've done it for 90.
Oh, okay. I thought you just meant up there.
No.
That's some stoppage time and VAR situations we got there.
If I've got that wrong, I hold my hands up to Kaminsky and co, and I will eat humble pie on whenever we do the review podcast. But the chances of keeping a Champions League side to no goals throughout the course of the season, as much as we're improved, don't quite have that sort of feeling yet. But I don't think there's going to be many matches now between now and the end of the season where Luton don't get on the score sheet. Therefore, 1-1 seems perfectly acceptable and applicable to me. What say you?
Well, we can't keep agreeing and going for the same result. So I'm going to be ambitious after that Tuesday night. And I agree with you. I think that they'll score, but I think Luton will score 3. So 3-1 for me, please.
3-1 Luton, my word, that would be absolutely lovely. Exact reverse of that FA Cup tie from a few years ago, and yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah, be be well worth the climb up them steps to the away end. That is for sure. Were that to happen, let us know your score predictions. As always, no right answers in the Brighton game. We're not going to condemn you too much for that, because absolutely nobody would have seen that coming. You could have told me before the game it was going to be 4-0 and I'd have picked another score prediction. That's how unlikely that game was.
Soulful Hatter said, can he have a half a point for guessing that it would be 2-2, so therefore 4 goals? And I said, I think I've tried to get away with that. And he's a hardline man, so that's no dice there, isn't it?
And yet, no go, mate, I'm afraid. Good effort. Keep trying. You'll get there eventually. James is testament to that. Keep on trying and you'll eventually get there.
It only took me 55 episodes. Not all of those were score prediction episodes, though.
No,
Come
they
on.
weren't.
I mean, half of them are review podcasts and a couple of deep dives and an interview on. So it's not as
I think
bad.
it was game 26, wasn't it, if you include cup games and things like that.
26 predictions.
Yeah.
Nowhere near.
So keep
But this one, 3-1, nailed on. Get on it. Morris to score and all.
So keep trying, Soulful Hatter, and eventually you'll nail it. Let us have your score predictions, as always, any right ones of a Luton nature, and we'll read them out in the review podcast, as we always do. Please do keep all of your comments coming in. We do read them. We do try and reply to as many as we can. We are churning these podcasts out quite quickly this week because of the amount of games. So if we do miss your comment, keep sending us comments. We will get to it eventually. We apologise if we miss them, but we do try and get to all of them, don't we?
Yeah, get Kev when you see him in the away end.
Get me if you see me in the away end. Absolutely. More than welcome for chat. No problem.
Friendly kicks, though, not like West Ham and West Brom and Wolves. None of that.
No. We don't need none of that shenanigans. That's for sure. Keep letting us know who you'd like on the podcast. We'll do our best to get those on. Please do keep subscribing. The subscriber numbers are going up rapidly now, and we really, really appreciate that. The more subscribers we can get, the further and wider our reach can be, and we can get bigger and better guests on for you as always. And more importantly, for yourself, you'll know exactly when the next episode of the podcast will drop, as you'll get a notification for that. Thank you very much for watching or listening, however it is that you've consumed this podcast. Thanks to James for keeping me company and keeping it on football for this episode. That was much more of easy to manage podcast than the last one. That is for sure.
Do you know what? All the previous games all that stuff still stands. I just cannot be arsed dealing with deluded fans on it.
We're in a positive mood. We want to talk about positive things, and that's exactly how we've done it on this podcast. Thanks also to the Hightown Club for hosting us, as always, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our wonderful intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all of the designs that you see on set. Until the next time, which will be the review of what we hope will be a lovely, wonderful away trip to Newcastle. Until then, come on, you Hatters.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul, this